David's Christmas Miracle. Exterior, country road, night. A 1966 Ford Fairlane drives down a very dark and lonely stretch of a country road near a small Midwestern farm town. Its headlights illuminate the snowy road ahead. The date is December 22nd, 1968, and the car is driven by David Morris, a handsome 18-year-old college freshman. His passenger is Jimmy Henderson, a cute 16-year-old high school junior. Snow swirls lightly in the air. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, sung by Gene Autry, plays on the radio.
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all?
Interior, David Morris's car, same time. David and Jimmy sing along with the radio. When the lyrics get to the word nose, Jimmy reaches over and taps David on the nose several times in rhythm with the song until the lyrics get to the word glows.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glowed.
David playfully pushes Jimmy's hand away. They laugh and continue to sing along. Jimmy stays close to David on the seat. They look at each other and have fun camping with the lyrics while they sing.
All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him.
Suddenly, Jimmy moves close and kisses David on his right cheek, and then quickly slides back to the passenger side of the front seat. They both stop singing, but the song continues on the radio. David looks at Jimmy, who is looking out his car door window into the darkness. David slows the car, stops, and puts the gear in park. He looks straight out the windshield at the swirling snow. The song is now playing the instrumental interlude. David rests his head on his hands on the steering wheel. Before the singing starts again, David raises his head, turns down the volume on the radio, and continues staring straight ahead. Jimmy continues to look out his car door window, not at David.
Jimmy?
David turns to look at Jimmy with tears streaming down his face.
Jimmy, come here, please.
Jimmy finally turns and faces David in the dark car.
You're crying.
Jimmy slides over to comfort David. He wipes David's tears from his cheeks.
Please don't cry. You'll make me cry too. Then our tears will freeze into icicles.
They both laugh. Jimmy places his hands on either side of David's face and slowly leans in, gently kissing David on the lips. They continue to kiss lightly for a few more seconds.
You wouldn't believe how long I've wanted to do that.
Probably as long as I've dreamed about it.
Jimmy snuggles into David's chest under David's outstretched arm that closes to envelop Jimmy into himself.
My Christmas miracle. It took courage for you to do what you did just now.
Courage or foolhardiness? I just couldn't hold back any longer.
You know, we can't tell anyone about this or how we feel about each other. No one. We still have to be careful and on our guard.
But for now, let's just enjoy being happy together.
David puts the car back into drive and turns the volume back up on the radio. A beautiful instrumental version of "O Holy Night" is playing. The car slowly moves forward with the radio softly playing. Jimmy is snuggled closely against David, and they embrace while David carefully steers the car down the snowy country road. Interior, Henderson home, kitchen, later. Jimmy and David sit at the Hendersons' kitchen table while Jimmy's mom, Shirley Henderson, sets a plate of decorated Christmas cookies in front of the boys. A lighted Christmas tree can be seen in the living room. Christmas music plays softly in the background. They start eating cookies and drinking cocoa. Shirley sits at the table with the boys.
How did caroling go?
It was so much fun. I think there were 12 of us total. We sounded pretty good, even if I say so myself.
David laughs.
I'd have to agree with you on that.
So, how's university life treating you?
The coursework is really difficult. Much more than I expected.
You did so well in high school. I'm sure you'll do well there too. Have you decided on a major?
I'm starting out in the science track, but the more I get into it, I'm really not enjoying it as much as I'd hoped.
I suppose you don't need to have all the answers right away. Do you have a girlfriend yet?
David continues to look at Shirley and never glances at Jimmy.
There's one girl, Susan, who's in several classes with me. She also sings in the choir on Sundays.
That's nice. Do you think it could get serious?
Mom, stop being so nosy.
It's okay. We both study so much that we have little time for a social life. I even brought some books home over Christmas break.
Jimmy's father and I got married right out of high school. We were in love and knew that's what we both wanted, so we didn't wait.
You are very young to have a son already in high school.
I won't feel old until he leaves for college. For now, I still have my job of looking after him at this impressionable age. You understand.
Of course.
Jimmy rolls his eyes.
These cookies and cocoa are delicious. Just what we needed after a night of caroling.
David finishes his cup of cocoa and cookie. He looks out the kitchen window at the snowfall.
I think I'd better be going before the roads get too bad.
David puts on his coat and stocking cap. He heads for the door.
I wish you all a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and your folks.
Merry Christmas, David.
Exterior, movie theater, night. David and Jimmy stand in line at the outdoor ticket booth of a movie theater. The marquee reads, Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet.
I'm surprised your folks let you see this movie with me.
They thought it was going to be the whole group of us.
So did I. Jeannie's sick. Brenda's family is having a Christmas party she didn't want to miss, and Gary is out of town.
It's much better this way. Just like the movie. Two star-crossed lovers.
You are aware of how this story ends, right?
They both laugh. Interior, movie theater, later. David and Jimmy are seated next to each other. David holds a large tub of popcorn on his lap. The scene in the movie where Romeo first sees Juliet plays on the screen. The dance ends and Romeo wends his way around the room to position himself, unseen, behind Juliet.
If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle sin is this. My lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth the rough touch with a gentle kiss.
Jimmy reaches in for popcorn the moment after David does, and he inadvertently lays his hand directly on top of David's hand. He leaves it there for a few seconds before pulling out some popcorn.
Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much, which mannerly devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch, and palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss.
David moves his free hand down to the seat next to Jimmy's seat. Jimmy notices and moves his hand so that it touches David's hand. They leave them there, with their hands touching.
Have not saints lips, and holy palmers too?
Aye, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer.
Oh then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair.
Exterior, country road, later. David stops his car in the same area of the country road where he and Jimmy first kissed. David and Jimmy are seated closely together on the front seat. As they look at each other, Jimmy holds his ungloved hand up with the palm facing David.
And palm to palm is holy palmer's kiss.
David removes his glove, opens his hand, and touches Jimmy's palm with his. They hold their hands like that while gazing into each other's eyes. Jimmy intertwines his fingers with David's fingers and strengthens his grip on his hand as his fingers curl downward.
Let lips do what hands do.
David and Jimmy warmly kiss in the dark car. Jimmy pulls back.
How can you leave me now?
I don't want to. I'll be back for spring break, and we'll have all summer together. It'll be great. You'll see.
I can't stand the thought of being so far away.
And keep me close. Here.
David places his hand over Jimmy's heart.
Every day. Always.
Jimmy then places his hand over David's heart. David places his hand over Jimmy's hand.
You're already there.
David reaches into his pocket and hands Jimmy a small piece of paper.
Here's my address at school. Write to me. Just don't let your parents know. I won't be able to write back because they would notice it in the mail.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
That I shall say good night, till it be morrow.
David and Jimmy kiss again and hold each other tightly. Interior, Henderson home, Jimmy's bedroom, night. Jimmy sits at his desk. The desk lamp shines down on an open textbook and school notebooks. He writes a line or two and then stops to think. He hears his bedroom door open and quickly moves a notepaper over his paper.
When you want a break from homework, I have some freshly baked cookies waiting just for you.
Oh, that sounds great. I'll be there soon.
Shirley leaves and shuts the door behind her. Jimmy retrieves the paper he's writing. Close-up of the letter Jimmy is writing shows the first line, Dear David, at the top of the sheet of paper. Interior, David Morris's college dorm room, afternoon. David sits at his desk and smiles while reading a letter. When he finishes, he kisses the signature, refolds the letter, and places it back in the envelope. He holds the envelope next to his heart and stares out his window blankly as if daydreaming. Cut 2. Exterior, State Park, morning. It's the summer of 1969 and school is out. David and Jimmy laugh as they run through the park, pulling a kite string. They watch it soar in the air in the early morning sun. Exterior, State Park, later. David, Jimmy, and their friends, Jean Hines, Brenda Jacobs, and Gary Lee, hike through the woods. Jimmy pulls David off the trail to show him a particularly scenic view. They furtively hold hands, hug, and kiss out of sight of the others. Exterior, State Park, afternoon. David, Jimmy, Jean, Brenda, and Gary sunbathe in the park. Jimmy gets up to play frisbee with David. Gary joins them. Exterior, State Park, evening. Gary grills hamburgers at a campsite. Jean and Brenda set out extra food from a picnic basket and the group eats supper at a picnic table. Exterior, State Park, night. David, Jimmy, Jean, Brenda, and Gary lie stargazing on blankets spread on the ground. Jimmy and David lie next to each other under a blanket. They hold hands under the blanket as they look up toward the sky, occasionally glancing at each other, smiling and pointing out stars. Exterior, Country Fair, evening. David, Jimmy, Jean, and Brenda attempt to win prizes at a ring toss and similar games. They stop at several booths to buy food and drinks. Exterior, County Fair, night. David, Jimmy, Jean, and Brenda ride different amusement rides, including the Tilt-A-Whirl, the roller coaster, and the Ferris wheel. Exterior, County Fair, later. Jean and Brenda break away from the boys and leave the fair together. David and Jimmy walk down the road to the exit. Janet Henderson, a 15-year-old high school sophomore, sees her cousin Jimmy about to leave the fair and runs to catch up with him. Before she gets there, Jimmy pushes David between two booths back into a dark, secluded area. They quickly kiss before returning to the main road to leave. Unknown to them, Janet witnesses the entire scene, but holds back and says nothing. A smile crosses her face as the boys walk out the gate together. Exterior, secluded grotto, evening. The gang throws a surprise party for Jimmy. A woodland grotto is decorated with almost 100 lighted votive candles. Picnic food and a birthday cake with 17 candles are shared. Interior, David Morris's car, later. Jimmy sits close to David as they drive down the country road. Fields sown in corn and soybean line both sides of the road.
Happy birthday, my dear friend. Only one more year and you'll be headed for college.
This has been the best summer of my life.
And it will only get better and better. Thank God we found each other.
They snuggle closely in the seat while the sun sets. Interior Henderson home, Jimmy's bedroom, later. Bob and Shirley Henderson stand in Jimmy's bedroom while he lies on his bed.
Your cousin Janet told us she saw you and David kissing at the fair.
She's lying. She's always had a thing for David. She's just jealous of any time we spend together.
There's no reason to believe why she would make up such a slanderous lie. Have you two ever kissed?
Why would we?
I've always had my doubts about that boy. We should never have let you run around with someone like him.
Someone like him? What are you talking about? Why don't you clean up your dirty mind?
Don't you dare talk to your mother like that.
I have to do something to shock you into reality. How many times do I have to say it? Nothing wrong is going on.
We want to trust you, Jimmy. You were brought up in the church and taught right from wrong. We want to believe you when you say you've done nothing wrong. You are not the aggressor in this situation, and anything that may have happened is not your fault.
David is not an aggressor. He's the opposite of that. He's a great guy. You even said so yourself. Why all this drama over nothing?
Your father and I agree that we need to put a stop to this unhealthy friendship you have with him before it deteriorates into an unholy relationship.
What do you mean, put a stop to it? He's my friend.
We're going to talk to him about that.
Mom? Dad?
Jimmy looks pleadingly at his parents.
David is the best friend I've ever had. He's kind, talented, funny, smart, everything I could ever want in a friend. We enjoy the same things and always have something to talk about. We like each other. Why are you doing this to me?
Jimmy, we are not punishing you for anything you may or may not have done. It's just that we believe he is not a good influence on you. No one like him will ever be able to give you a happy and fulfilling life. It's our duty to steer you into more healthy relationships.
Jimmy rolls over in his bed and buries his face in his pillow. He sobs quietly.
We'll ask David to visit. You will make it clear to him that you agree with us and you need to end your friendship. If you don't follow through with this, we will be forced to bring to light our concerns with his parents. I'm sure you don't want him to suffer the consequences of that encounter or any public embarrassment that could affect him later in life.
Interior Henderson home, living room, afternoon. David sits in a single stuffed chair in the living room. Bob and Shirley Henderson sit across from him on the sofa. Jimmy stands in the doorway looking down at the floor.
David, we've asked you here to discuss our feelings, our misgivings about your friendship with our son. We feel that it is in Jimmy's best interests that he sever his ties with you completely and spend the rest of his time in high school with friends his own age. I'm sure you would agree that you want what's best for Jimmy.
David is horrified at what he hears Shirley saying. He squirms in his chair, obviously very uncomfortable. He glances at Jimmy, who continues to look down at the floor.
Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, I want to assure you that I also have Jimmy's best interest at heart. We're good friends who enjoy each other's company, and I really don't see how that could be a problem for either one of us. I would never do anything to hurt him. What brought on this sudden change?
We just want Jimmy to concentrate on his future by associating with girls and boys his own age. There is to be no more communication of any sort between you two.
I'm still not sure I understand why you're doing this.
I think I've made our feelings very clear on the subject.
May I ask Jimmy how he feels about this?
Of course. Jimmy, go ahead and tell him how you feel.
Jimmy finally raises his head and looks directly at David. No emotion shows on his face, but tears are welling in his eyes. His voice quivers as he stumbles through his answer.
My folks are right. If you know what's best, then you'll do what they want.
David looks confused and hurt as he struggles to understand what Jimmy is saying. After a couple of seconds, he composes himself and appears to comprehend Jimmy's words.
I think I understand, and regretfully, I will respect your parents' wishes.
Good. I'm glad you see things our way. Now, I think you should leave.
Shirley stands and leads David by the arm to their front door, not allowing David and Jimmy to say goodbye. As David walks by Jimmy, he sees Jimmy's eyes are still filled with tears, some now streaming down his cheeks. David stops walking and looks directly at Jimmy.
I love you, Jimmy Henderson.
Jimmy raises his head to see David put his hand over his own heart.
Keep me close.
Shirley pushes David to continue walking toward the door. Jimmy puts his hand over his heart.
Always.
Jimmy watches David walk away. Interior, Henderson home, entrance hallway, moments later. As David walks through the door, he turns and looks back at Jimmy one last time.
You stay away from him.
The boy's eyes meet just before Shirley closes the door. Exterior, Henderson home, moments later. The door closed. David stands alone, frozen in disbelief. He eventually gets into his car and drives down the long country road while the radio plays Henry Mancini's theme from Romeo and Juliet.